Oh my God.
The herd of giraffes was walking through the dry African savanna when something strange happened. The other mothers began to look at one giraffe named Amara with worry in their eyes. Amara was walking slower than usual. Her body looked tired. Her breathing was heavy and fast. Everyone could see that she was about to give birth very soon. The sun was burning hot above them, and the land was completely dry. There was no rain for many weeks. The grass was brown and dead. The water sources were disappearing. This was the worst possible time for a baby giraffe to be born. But nature does not care about good timing. Nature does not care about what is easy or what is hard. Amara's body was telling her that her baby was coming, and she could not stop it, no matter how much she wanted to wait for better days. All the other giraffes in the herd knew that something was wrong. They could feel it in the air. They could see it in the way Amara moved. She would stop every few minutes and stand very still. Her whole body would shake. Then she would start walking again. The other mothers remembered this feeling. They remembered their own births. They knew exactly what Amara was going through. But this was not a good time for birth. This was a time when every animal in the savanna was struggling to find food and water. This was a time when predators were more dangerous than ever because they were hungry and desperate. A newborn baby giraffe would be the easiest meal they could find. This was the worst time in the whole year to bring a new life into the world. Amara found a small group of trees and stopped there. The trees were not very big, and they did not have much shade, but they were the best protection she could find. She stood under the trees and waited. The other giraffes stayed near her, but gave her space. They understood that she needed to be alone for this. The hours passed slowly. The sun moved across the sky. Amara's body was working hard. She was breathing faster and faster. The pain was getting stronger and stronger. Every animal knows pain when a baby is being born. Every mother knows what it feels like. And every mother knows that after the pain comes either joy or sadness. There is no middle ground when a baby is born. The baby either comes into the world alive and healthy, or something goes terribly wrong. Then finally, after many hours of waiting and struggling in pain, the baby giraffe came into the world. Amara looked down at her new daughter. The moment she saw her baby, her heart felt both happy and sad at the same time. The baby was alive. This was good. The baby was moving and breathing. This was good too, but something was very, very wrong. The baby giraffe was too small. She was way too small. This tiny giraffe did not look like a normal newborn. This tiny giraffe looked like she was not fully ready to be born. She looked weak. She looked fragile. She looked like she might break if someone touched her too hard. Amara named her daughter Zara. This name meant princess in the language of nature, and Amara thought that her tiny baby deserved a name that sounded important and strong. But looking at her daughter, Amara was very worried. She knew how much baby giraffes usually weighed when they were born. They weighed about 130 pounds. They were strong and could stand up within hours. But Zara was different. Zara weighed only 65 pounds. This was less than half of what a normal baby giraffe should weigh. Zara's legs were very thin. Her neck was very thin. Her whole body looked like it could break very easily. Amara felt fear in her heart. She had seen other animals born small and weak. She had seen what usually happened to them. They did not survive. The world was too hard for them. Life was too difficult for them. But Amara made a decision right then and there. She decided that she would do everything in her power to make sure that her daughter would survive. She did not care if Zara was small. She did not care if Zara was weak. Zara was her baby, and Amara would protect her with everything she had. This mother giraffe looked at her tiny daughter and started to feed her. Zara tried to drink milk from her mother, but it was hard for her. She was so weak that she could barely lift her head. Her tiny mouth could not hold onto her mother the way that normal baby giraffes could. But Amara was patient. She stood very still and let her baby drink as slowly as she needed to drink. This was her daughter, and she would wait forever if she had to. The other giraffes in the herd came closer to see the new baby. They were surprised when they saw how small Zara was. Some of them shook their heads because they believed that this baby would not make it. They had seen this before. They knew what usually happened to babies born this small and this weak. But they did not say anything to Amara. They understood that a mother does not want to hear bad news about her baby. They just watched and waited to see what would happen. Some of them felt sad. Some of them felt afraid. All of them knew that the coming weeks and months would be very difficult for both Amara and her tiny daughter. Night came to the savanna. The temperature dropped. The stars came out and filled the sky with light. Amara lay down next to her daughter to keep her warm. Zara was so small that she fit almost completely underneath her mother's body. Amara wanted to make sure that her baby would not get too cold during the night. She wanted to make sure that Zara would be protected from any danger. She stayed awake all through the night, watching, listening, protecting. She did not sleep. She did not rest. She only stayed next to her daughter and kept her safe. When morning came, Zara was still alive. This was the first small victory. The tiny giraffe had made it through the first night of her life. Amara looked at her daughter with love and determination. She knew that many challenges were ahead of them. She knew that the world would be very hard on this small, weak baby. She knew that most animals in the herd probably thought that Zara would not survive, but Amara did not believe that. Amara looked at her daughter's eyes and saw something strong there. She saw something that wanted to live. She saw something that refused to give up. She saw a fighter, even though her body was so small. This was the beginning of a story that nobody expected. This was the beginning of a story about a tiny giraffe who was born into the worst possible conditions and circumstances. This was the beginning of a story about a mother's love and a baby's will to survive. Nobody knew yet what was going to happen. Nobody could predict what the future held for this small family. But everyone watching that morning knew that they were about to witness something that would change them forever. They did not know it yet, but they were about to learn a lesson about courage that they would never forget. 2 months had passed since Zara was born. The tiny giraffe had survived longer than many animals thought she would. But surviving and living were two very different things. Zara was alive, yes, but she was struggling in ways that broke her mother's heart every single day. She could stand now. She could walk. She could even run a little bit if her mother pushed her. But everything was harder for Zara than it was for the other baby giraffes in the herd. Everything took more energy. Everything hurt her body in ways that normal babies did not experience. The dry season had become worse, much worse. The sun was burning hotter every single day. The rain had not come for many weeks now. The water sources that the giraffes depended on were disappearing. The watering holes that were always full were now becoming smaller and smaller. Some of them had dried up completely. The grass that the giraffes ate was turning brown and dying. The trees were losing their leaves. Everything was dying because there was no water. Everything was struggling because there was no rain. And the animals of the savanna were beginning to panic because they knew what a serious drought meant. A serious drought meant starvation. A serious drought meant death. The herd had to move. They could not stay in one place anymore because there was nothing to eat and nothing to drink. The leader of the herd, a large male giraffe named Kobe, made the decision to travel. The whole group would have to walk many miles to find new water sources. They would have to search for places where the rain had fallen more recently. They would have to keep moving until they found land where life still existed. This decision was made quickly because there was no time to waste. Every day that passed without water and food was one day closer to disaster. For Zara, the traveling was a nightmare. Her tiny body was not strong enough for long walks. Her legs hurt. Her neck hurt. Her whole body hurt. but she had to keep up with the herd. If she fell behind, if she got separated from her mother, then she would die. The predators were always watching. The hyenas, the lions, the wild dogs, they were all hungry and angry and desperate. A baby giraffe that got separated from the group would not last more than a few hours. Zara knew this somehow. Every young animal knows this, so she pushed her tiny body forward. She walked when she wanted to rest. She ran when she wanted to walk. She did everything her mother asked her to do, no matter how much it hurt. Amara never complained. She never made her daughter feel like she was a burden. She walked slowly enough so that Zara could keep up. She shared her food when there was food to share. She let Zara drink first when they found water. She protected her daughter from the dangers of the savannah with a fierceness that was almost scary to watch. Other mothers watched Amara and saw something beautiful. They saw a love that was stronger than any force in nature. Some of them helped too. They stood guard while Amara rested. They helped protect Zara from predators. They brought her soft leaves and gentle guidance. The herd understood that this tiny baby was important. The herd understood that saving one small life could mean everything. But danger was always close. One day, when the herd was walking through a particularly dry area, a group of hyenas began to follow them. The hyenas could smell weakness. They could smell that there was a small, young, helpless baby in the group. They wanted that baby. The hyenas kept their distance, waiting, watching, planning. They knew that if the baby got separated from the herd, that would be their chance. They would rush in and take her. This is how nature works. This is how the strong survive and the weak do not. Amara saw the hyenas. She felt the danger. Her whole body went stiff with fear and anger. She moved closer to Zara. She kept her daughter right next to her, so close that they were almost touching. She did not let Zara out of her sight for even 1 second. The other giraffes formed a protective circle around the baby. The males stood on the outside of the circle, ready to fight if the hyenas came too close. The females stood in the middle, protecting the youngest and weakest members of the group. This was how they survived. This was how they protected their own. The hyenas watched and waited for hours, but they never attacked. They could see that the baby was too well protected. They could see that the herd was too strong and too organized. Eventually, the hyenas gave up and left to hunt something else. Zara had survived another danger, another day, another test of her will to live. Weeks passed. The herd kept walking. They found water in some places. They found food in other places. They survived day after day after day. But Zara was becoming weaker, not stronger. The constant walking was wearing her down. Her body was not healing. Her injuries from birth were not getting better. Something was wrong inside her body, something that neither her mother nor anyone else could fix. Zara's eyes began to look tired. Her movements became slower. She started to fall behind more and more often. Amara had to stop and wait for her daughter to catch up. This happened many times every day. One afternoon, something unexpected happened. The herd had been walking since sunrise. The sun was burning down from above like a huge fire in the sky. Zara had fallen behind again. She was so tired that she could barely lift her feet. Her mother had stopped and was waiting for her to catch up. But this time, Zara did not catch up. This time, Zara collapsed. She just fell down onto the hot sand and did not get up. Her legs would not work. Her body would not move. She just lay there breathing very slowly and very weakly. Amara ran back to her daughter. She was terrified. She thought that this was the end. She thought that her baby was dying right there in front of her. She made sounds that were so sad and so painful that they echoed across the whole savannah. She touched her daughter with her nose. She begged Zara to get up. She promised her that everything would be okay. But Zara could not move. Zara just lay there in the hot sun, barely breathing, barely alive. The herd gathered around. Some of them thought that they should leave Zara and keep moving. Staying in one place was dangerous, but most of them refused. They stood guard around Amara and Zara. They formed a protective circle that blocked the sun from hitting the babies so directly. They waited. They watched. They hoped. For 3 hours, Zara lay on the ground. And then, slowly, incredibly, she began to move again. Her eyes opened. Her breathing became stronger. She tried to stand. It took many tries, but finally she got her legs underneath her body and stood up. But this moment changed everything. Everyone in the herd knew now that Zara was very sick. Everyone knew now that something was seriously wrong with the tiny giraffe. Nobody said it out loud, but everyone was thinking the same thing. This baby might not make it. This baby might die before they found water. This baby might not survive this journey. And nobody could do anything to stop it except wait and hope and pray that Zara would find the strength to keep going. 3 more days passed. 3 days of walking. 3 days of searching for water that was becoming harder and harder to find. 3 days of watching Zara struggle with every single step. The tiny giraffe had recovered from her collapse, but she was not the same. Something had broken inside her. Something that would never be the same again. She could walk, but she walked slowly. She could eat, but she did not eat much. She could drink water, but her body seemed to reject it. She was becoming weaker every day, and everyone in the herd could see it happening right in front of their eyes. Amara was losing hope. She did not want to believe it, but she could feel it happening in her heart. She could feel herself beginning to accept that her daughter might not survive. She had done everything right. She had protected her daughter. She had fed her. She had loved her with every fiber of her body. But sometimes, love is not enough. Sometimes, the world is stronger than even the strongest love. Sometimes, a body that is born too small and too weak cannot overcome the challenges that come with being alive in such a dangerous place. The herd was moving through a section of the savanna that was particularly rocky and dangerous. The ground was not smooth like it usually was. There were rocks everywhere. Big rocks and small rocks and medium rocks. There were places where the earth had cracked from the heat and the drought. There were areas where the ground looked solid, but was actually hollow underneath. This was dangerous territory, and the giraffes had to move carefully. They had to watch where they stepped. They had to be alert and aware of every danger around them. Zara was falling further and further behind the rest of the herd. She could not keep up anymore. Her tiny body was simply too exhausted. Her mother had to keep stopping and waiting for her to catch up. This was slowing down the whole group. Some of the other giraffes were beginning to get impatient. They wanted to move faster. They knew that finding water was more important than staying with one small baby. But Amara refused to leave her daughter. She would never leave Zara behind. She would rather die than abandon her baby. The afternoon sun was burning hot. It was the hottest part of the day. The heat was making everyone tired and thirsty and angry. The air felt like fire in their lungs. The ground felt like hot metal under their hooves. Everything was burning. Everything hurt. The whole world seemed to be against them. The whole world seemed to want them to give up and die. But the herd kept moving. They kept pushing forward. They knew that giving up meant death. They knew that stopping meant the end. So they kept moving, even though every step hurt. Even though every breath was difficult. Even though everything inside them wanted to collapse and never get up again. Zara was about 20 feet behind her mother. She was moving slower and slower. Her legs were shaking. Her eyes were starting to close like she was falling asleep while she was walking. She was so tired. She was so thirsty. She was so hungry. She wanted to stop. She wanted to lie down. She wanted to rest forever. But her mother's voice kept calling her forward. Her mother's love kept pulling her toward the next step, and the next step, and the next step. Then it happened, the moment that changed everything. The moment that nobody expected. The moment that would define Zara's entire life. The tiny giraffe was walking across a small patch of ground that looked perfectly normal. It looked like all the other ground around it. It looked safe. It looked solid. But it was not solid. Underneath the surface, there was a hole. A very big hole. A hole that had been dug many, many years ago by humans who were searching for water. The hole had been covered over with earth and sand and dust. For many years, it had been hidden. But now, after all the drought and the heat and the cracking of the earth, the covering was weak. The ground above the hole was very thin. One wrong step could make it break. Zara took that wrong step. Her tiny hoof landed on the weak ground. For just 1 second, nothing happened. Then the ground below her started to crack. She could feel it happening. She could feel the earth starting to give way beneath her. Her eyes got very big. She had time to make one sound, one small cry, one tiny call of surprise and fear. And then the ground completely broke apart, and she was falling. She fell into darkness. She fell through empty space. She fell down and down and down. She was falling so fast that she could not think. She could not understand what was happening. She could not believe that the world had changed so quickly. One moment she was standing on solid ground. The next moment she was falling through nothing. Her body hit the sides of the hole as she fell. She felt pain shoot through her legs and her back. She felt her breath getting knocked out of her lungs. She was falling faster and faster, and she did not know when it would end, or if it would ever end. Then she hit the bottom. The impact was terrible. It was the worst pain she had ever felt in her short life. Her small body crashed against hard earth and stone. She could feel bones breaking. She could feel blood running down her body. She could feel everything wrong with what was happening. And then everything went dark. Everything went quiet. Everything went still. The tiny giraffe lay at the bottom of a deep well, barely breathing, barely alive, completely alone in the darkness. Above her, at the top of the well, Amara heard the sound. She heard the crack of breaking ground. She heard the cry of her daughter. She heard the sound of her baby falling through empty space. Her heart stopped. Her blood turned to ice. She ran toward the sound as fast as she could move. She ran toward the place where her daughter had been just seconds before. And then she saw it. The hole. The terrible hole. The place where her daughter had disappeared. She looked down into the darkness and called her daughter's name. She called and called and called. Her voice was filled with pain and fear and desperation. The sound echoed down into the darkness of the well, but there was no answer. There was only silence. There was only darkness. There was only the terrible fear that her daughter was gone forever. The other giraffes gathered around. They looked down into the well and understood immediately what had happened. A baby giraffe had fallen into a deep hole. A baby giraffe that was already sick. A baby giraffe that was already weak. A baby giraffe that should have been safe, but had been taken by the earth itself. Everyone thought the same thing. Everyone knew what this probably meant. The baby was dead. The baby had fallen too far. The baby could not survive a fall like that. Nobody could survive a fall like that. The terrible reality was setting in. Zara was gone. The tiny giraffe, who had fought so hard to stay alive, was finally defeated by the cruel world around her. But they did not know the truth yet. They did not know that at the bottom of that dark well, a tiny giraffe was still alive, still breathing, still fighting, still refusing to give up. Zara opened her eyes. She did not know how long she had been asleep. She did not know if it had been minutes or hours or days. Everything hurt. Every single part of her body was screaming in pain. Her legs hurt, her back hurt, her neck hurt, her head hurt. She wanted to cry, but she was too tired to even cry. She just lay on the ground at the bottom of the well and tried to understand what had happened. She tried to understand where she was. She tried to understand why everything was so dark and so cold and so terrible. The well was very deep. The light from the top was so far away that it looked like a tiny star. The darkness around her was so thick that she could barely see her own body. She could feel the stone walls around her. She could feel the cold earth beneath her. She could feel that she was trapped in a small space with no way out. The realization filled her with fear, so strong that her whole body started to shake. She was trapped. She was alone. She was in a place where nobody could reach her. Nobody could help her. Nobody could save her. This was the end. This was how she was going to die. Not outside in the sun with her mother. Not with the herd protecting her. But alone in the darkness at the bottom of a deep, dark, terrible well. She tried to move her back legs. Nothing happened. She tried again. Still nothing. She moved her front legs and felt pain shoot through them, but at least they moved. Her back legs, though, they would not work. They would not move no matter how hard she tried. This terrified her even more than being trapped. What good was it to be alive if she could not move? What good was it to survive the fall if her legs did not work? She felt something cold and wet beneath her. She looked down and realized that there was water at the bottom of the well. Water. In this terrible place, there was water. In a world where water was disappearing everywhere, here at the bottom of a deep well, there was water. Zara was so thirsty that her mouth felt like it was made of sand. She had not had anything to drink since before she fell. She pulled herself forward using her front legs, dragging her body across the ground. The pain was terrible, but the need for water was stronger than the pain. She reached the water and put her mouth down and drank. She drank and drank and drank. She drank like she had never tasted water before in her life. And for the first time since she woke up at the bottom of the well, she felt a tiny bit better. The water gave her a small amount of hope. The water meant that she might survive for a little longer. Above her, high above her at the top of the well, Amara was still standing at the edge. She had not moved. She had not left. She had been standing there, calling down into the darkness for hours now. Her voice was getting hoarse. Her body was getting tired, but she refused to leave. She refused to accept that her daughter was dead. She kept calling over and over, her voice echoing down the dark well, hoping against hope that her baby could hear her, hoping that her baby was still alive, hoping that somehow, impossibly, her daughter would answer. Days passed. Zara lost count of how many days. The darkness made it impossible to know when it was day and when it was night. The only way she could measure time was by her own hunger and thirst and the strange rhythm of her mother's voice calling down from above. At first, her mother's calls were strong and constant. Then they became weaker. Then there were long periods of silence. Zara began to think that her mother had left. Zara began to think that she was truly alone. But then the voice would come again, weaker and sadder than before, but still there, still calling, still refusing to give up. Zara survived by drinking the water at the bottom of the well. She found small plants and mosses growing on the walls of the well, and she ate them. They tasted bad. They were not what she was supposed to eat. But they were food, and food meant life. She survived by staying still and not wasting energy. She survived by remembering her mother's voice. She survived because something inside her refused to accept death. Something inside her was stronger than the pain. Something inside her was stronger than the darkness. Something inside her wanted to live, no matter what. Then something changed. On what she thought was maybe the 20th day, maybe the 23rd day, maybe she had no idea what day it was, Zara heard a new sound. The sound was different from her mother's voice. The sound was the sound of digging. The sound of earth and rock being moved. The sound of something that meant help was coming. Zara tried to make a sound. She tried to call out, but her voice was so weak that it barely made a noise. But then the digging got louder, the sound got closer. The light at the top of the well started to change. It started to get bigger. Zara realized what was happening. The herd had come back. They had not forgotten about her. They had not abandoned her. They had come back to save her. Her mother had called them back. Her mother's love had been so strong that it had called the whole herd back to this place. The digging continued. Hour after hour, the sides of the well got bigger. The opening got larger. More light poured in. Zara could see better now. She could see the walls around her. She could see the sky above her, getting closer and closer with every hour that passed. The pain in her body was still terrible. Her back legs still did not work. But Zara pulled herself forward using her front legs. She moved closer to the light. She moved closer to hope. She moved closer to her mother. And as she moved, she could hear new sounds. She could hear the voices of the herd. She could hear them calling to each other. She could hear them working together. She could hear them saving her life. Then she heard her mother's voice. Not from far above anymore. Closer, much closer. Her mother had come down to her. She could hear her mother breathing. She could smell her mother's familiar smell. And for the first time since she fell into the well, Zara felt like everything was going to be okay. She was not going to die in this darkness. She was not going to be alone forever. Her mother had come for her. The herd had come for her. Love had come for her. And now, nothing could stop them from bringing her back to the light. The moment finally came. The moment when Zara saw the sun for the first time in what felt like forever. The opening of the well had become large enough now. The herd had dug and worked tirelessly for 3 days straight. Their hooves were hurt. Their bodies were exhausted. Their muscles were screaming in pain. But nobody stopped. Nobody gave up. They kept digging because a tiny giraffe was at the bottom of that well, and she was one of their own. She was family, and family meant everything. Zara was terrified about leaving the well. She knew that her back legs did not work. She knew that she could not walk or stand or run like a normal giraffe. She knew that moving would hurt more than anything had ever hurt before. But she also knew that this was her only chance. This was her only opportunity to escape the darkness and return to the world above. She looked up at the opening of the well and saw the sky. She saw blue. She saw light. She saw her mother's face looking down at her with love so strong that it seemed to fill the entire well with warmth. Amara had not left the edge of that well for even one moment. She had stood there, day after day, night after night, refusing to eat, refusing to sleep, refusing to do anything except be there for her daughter. The other giraffes had brought her food. She had not eaten it. They had tried to make her rest. She had refused. All that mattered to her was that her daughter was alive somewhere below, and she would do whatever it took to bring her back to the light. Now, finally, she could see her baby. She could see that her daughter had survived. She could see that all of her love and determination had not been wasted. Zara began to pull herself forward. She used her front legs to drag her body toward the pathway that the herd had created. The pain was overwhelming. Every movement felt like 1,000 knives cutting through her body. But she did not stop. She could not stop. Her mother was waiting above. The sun was waiting above. Freedom was waiting above. She dragged herself forward inch by inch, pulling with her front legs, her back legs dragging uselessly behind her. The other giraffes had created a soft ramp with earth and moss to make the climb easier. They had thought of everything. They had prepared everything. They had made sure that their smallest and weakest member would have the best possible chance of survival. As Zara climbed higher and higher, the light got brighter and brighter. Her eyes, which had become used to darkness, began to hurt from the brightness of the sun. But she did not close her eyes. She kept climbing. She kept moving. She kept pushing forward because she knew that above her was everything she wanted in the world: her mother, her family, her life, the light that she had thought she would never see again. She climbed and climbed and climbed, and her tiny body was shaking from the effort, but she would not give up. She would not surrender. She would not accept defeat. Then, finally, her front legs reached the edge of the well, the upper edge, the boundary between darkness and light, between death and life, between the terrible past and the unknown future. She pulled herself forward one last time, with every ounce of strength that remained in her tiny body. And then she fell forward onto the warm earth above, into the sunlight, into the arms of her mother, into the embrace of the herd that had saved her life. Amara made sounds that were so beautiful and so sad and so happy that the other giraffes felt tears running down their faces. She touched her daughter with her nose. She breathed in the smell of her baby. She could not believe that Zara was really alive. She could not believe that her daughter had survived. She could not believe that the impossible had happened. Her baby was here. Her baby was alive. Her baby had come back to her. For 3 weeks, Amara had hoped and prayed and refused to give up hope. And now, that love and determination had paid off in the most beautiful way. But Zara was still very sick. She was still very weak. She could not stand. Her back legs would not work at all. The fall into the well had done terrible damage to her body. Many of the giraffes believed that she would never walk again. They believed that she would spend the rest of her life unable to use her back legs. They believed that she would never be a normal giraffe. But they were wrong. Something incredible was about to happen. Something that would teach the entire herd a lesson about the power of love and the power of refusing to give up. For weeks, Zara could only lie on the ground next to her mother. The herd brought her soft leaves and gentle water. They stood guard around her while she slept, protecting her from predators. They gave her time and space and love to heal. And slowly, incredibly, impossibly, something started to change. The numbness in her back legs began to fade. Feeling started to return. She could move her feet a little bit, then a little bit more, then more and more. After 6 weeks, Zara was able to stand. After 2 months, Zara was able to walk. After 4 months, Zara was able to run. She never completely recovered. She always had a small limp. She always moved a little bit slower than the other giraffes. She remained smaller throughout her entire life. But she was alive. She was healthy. She was thriving in ways that nobody had thought possible. She had survived the well. She had survived the injuries. She had survived everything that the world had thrown at her. And now she was stronger than she had ever been before. Not stronger in her body, but stronger in her spirit. Stronger in her will to live. Stronger in her understanding that love and family and community were the most powerful forces in the entire world. Zara lived for 23 years. She had babies of her own. She became a mother who loved her children with the same fierce determination that her own mother had loved her. She became a leader in the herd, a symbol of hope and survival and the power of refusing to give up. Every giraffe in the herd knew her story. Every young calf heard about the tiny giraffe who fell into the well and survived. They heard about the mother who never gave up. They heard about the herd that worked together to save one small life. And they learned that in this world, no matter how small you are, no matter how weak you might seem, no matter how impossible things appear to be, there is always hope. There is always love. There is always a reason to keep fighting. When Zara finally died of old age, surrounded by her children and her grandchildren, the whole herd mourned her. They understood that they had lost something precious. They understood that they had lost a teacher. They understood that they had lost a living example of what it meant to be brave, to be strong, to be determined, and to never, ever give up. Zara's story became a legend in the savannah. It became a story that would be remembered forever. A story about a tiny giraffe who should have died but chose to live. A story about a mother's love that could move mountains. A story about a family that refused to abandon one of their own. And most importantly, a story about the incredible power that lives inside every creature on this earth, no matter how small, to survive and to thrive and to inspire others to do the same.